When a person that we know is signed up for the military and is ready to go to war, we fear for their lives. But when a person we know says they want to kill themselves, we don't take them seriously. We laugh at them, and we just say that they just want attention. But what we don't realize is that that person is more likely to kill themselves than the other friend who's going off to war. According to the World Health Organization, every year, more people commit suicide than are killed in all the world's armed conflicts. You see, because no one is immune. Even those who are deemed our protectors can fall into this trap. According to Time magazine, Army recruiters have Army recruiter suicides are 3 times higher than the rest of the Army. And there's many reasons why they believe that. For instance, 73% of recruiters are veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, and many suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder from the stuff they've seen or may have done overseas. And they become disassociated with the rest of the world when they come home from their friends and from their families. They become really lonely, and they put in long, hard hours to get 2 recruits they need every month, which is almost impossible. And they constantly get berated for not doing their jobs properly. And all those factors put together, it just makes just a perfect recipe for someone who wants to kill themselves. What most people don't seem to realize is that depression is an illness, or they don't realize that depression is an illness, or they think it's a creation of the modern world, but that's not the case. In fact, depression used to be called melancholia, and it's been diagnosed since the 5th century by certain philosophers. Another problem is that our culture does not allow us to stop and say, I need help, especially from men. It's such a taboo subject that because we value that we can do everything by ourselves and we don't need anyone to help us along the way. We need to understand that it's not the person who's in control here, it's the illness in their head. But another reason is we tend to romanticize suicide. For example, Ian Curtis was the frontman for the highly influential band Joy Division, who killed himself at 23. And ever since then, that band's always been infamous for that. But he left a wife and child behind because he couldn't handle his epilepsy and stuff like that. And we deemed him as sort of a hero, but that's wrong. Now we can do something about this. We can curb suicide rates by certain actions. For example, when Britain changed its household gas from coke gas to a less toxic form, the suicide rate dropped by 1/3. Or when new rules were implemented to make it harder to obtain large quantity of pills, acetophenone poisoning dropped by 34%. We could learn some lessons from this. We can make more rules like this, like more security at popular places to commit suicide, like the Golden Gate Bridge, which is the most popular suicide place where people commit suicide, followed by the Sea of Trees forest in Japan, where every year a small army of police officers go around and look for bodies. The record for the year was 78, and every year it averages around 50 people. Or in the U.S., we have over 200 million legal firearms in people's houses today. If we make it harder to obtain guns, it also makes it harder for people to do rash, impulsive decisions that can affect not only them, but everyone, their family and friends. Now, they say that suicide is a permanent solution for a temporary problem. That's very true. No matter how bad things seem, no matter how hopeless you might get, there's always a way out of it. Now, there's one thing that you take from this. I hope that the next time you hear someone talk about this, take them seriously. Don't just give them the benefit of the doubt. Sure, it might be true that they just want attention, but what about a few years down the road that you're not there anymore, and everyone else just doesn't care for them, and they end up killing themselves? It can happen to anyone. It's not funny. And the saddest part about this is that it's completely preventable. Thank you.
All right, Brittany, what did you think?
You're a little nervous. I was not quite sure what you're persuading us to do, other than the fact, pay attention to people if they're crying out for help. There were positives here and there. I'm not quite sure on the eye contact. You never made your way over here, so I don't know if you were looking into other people's eyes. Very sad story. Kind of depressing. Funny what you're talking about. You had good sources. You cited everything that you got from like the internet or wherever you got it. It was an okay speech. You were nervous, I can tell. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Right, there's a lot about the speech that I think is very appealing. The visualization that you have at the beginning is pretty effective, and the statistic about the risk of death from suicide outweighing the risk of death from being killed in combat, I thought was very effective at setting up the subject. It sounds at first, though, like your focus is going to be on the military issues and suicides in the military, but then it just becomes a more general subject, and I think you need to have a clearer focus early on as to what it is you're going to try and convince us of. I think most people recognize that suicide is not something that's desirable, that it's something that we need to help people with. Your argument toward the end suggests two potential things that you could be working on, either preventative kinds of techniques, let's limit the opportunities, let's reduce the impulse sorts of things that people do by restricting or changing the world. I don't know how we cut out access to tall buildings and bridges and all that kind of stuff, but that's one approach. And then the other approach is really paying attention and listening to people, and I think that idea could probably be developed a lot more, and that's probably where you should have gone more with the presentation. How do we address people that we encounter that have such severe depression or are unable to cope or manage? It's definitely a tough thing. I didn't think that there wasn't a preview, although I could follow distinct ideas in the speech. You're kind of going from military to depression to men resisting this, and then you've got sometimes people romanticize this. So there is a pattern there, but it's not a very clear pattern. It seems like the ideas are randomly plopped down there, and you're just going from one idea to the next, and I think it needs to build a lot more. Like I said at the end, I think if you worked a little bit more on individual solutions and maybe how people can detect those kinds of things. How does somebody talk to somebody that they think is suicidal? What do we do if we know somebody is deeply depressed? They haven't said they're suicidal, but we suspect it. How are we supposed to act in that situation? Give us some practical advice on those kinds of things. I think that would make it a little bit stronger pitch from your point of view. Presentation things, I could hear you. You have pretty good eye contact. Your gesture's always limited because you've got that piece of paper in your hand the whole time. Maybe a little bit of anxiety in the voice, but it was okay. I didn't see any big problems there. Just you need a little bit more confidence and to like I said, engage a little bit more. But most of the things you're doing are fine. All right. Thank you.